How's everybody doing? Let me know if you can hear me okay, if my volume is all right, please. I see Nevada, California, St. Louis, Santa Fe, Oregon, yay, Atlanta. Bobby, hi, I'm glad you have your note-taking supplies all set to go. Oh, okay, good. Thank you, Susan. All right, great. Okay, so how's everybody doing? It's 12 o'clock. We'll give everybody another minute or so to come on in. Thank you. Thank you again, Susan Wilburn. Um, and I actually remembered to hit the record button, so that's great. Oh, from Portugal. Hello. Thank you for joining us. That's exciting. I was just talking to somebody about Portugal a couple of days ago from Tulsa, Pennsylvania. I see that. But yeah, Portugal's, my husband and I were on a cruise a bunch of years ago, and we disembarked in Portugal, and we just loved it. Hi from Fort Worth. Hello. Oh, first time in the live chat. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you're joining us. I like to give everybody an extra minute. From Vancouver, Canada. Great. Thank you. So, I think spring has finally sprung. This is your monthly Serger Savvy weather report from Connecticut. It's actually really nice. I was out walking yesterday. I had on a jersey with a spring jacket over it, and honestly, I was too warm with the jacket, but I was too lazy to walk back to my car to put it away. So I said, I'll just deal with it. But really, really nice weather. Our snow is melting like crazy, which I am not sad about at all. But today we are going to talk about differential feed because I've had a bunch of requests to discuss that in either a tip clip or a Serger Savvy or anything else. Let's see, Ottawa. Yay. Oh, time to get out your Serger and start using it. Hi from Ohio. Good. Thanks. We got people from all over the place. Thanks for joining. So, okay, so it's 12:03 my time. So let's get going. I'll do my usual disclaimer. Even though I am a Bernina ambassador, I do not work for Bernina. So as you know, I do not receive any commission on sales of any of their machines or other products at all. So anything you hear me say about the machine is because I love it. And but I'm very happy to help people from who are owners of all different brands of machines. That doesn't matter at all. If you've got a Baby Lock or a Juki or a Janome, I'll be very happy to help you. So that said, it's March, almost St. Patrick's Day. So happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody who celebrates. I just want to mention again, I have my ambassador appreciation coupons. These are from Bernina of America. They are only good in the United States. If you're thinking about purchasing a new machine, whether it's a serger or a sewing machine, Bernina or Burnett, or software, any purchase over $1,000 and up is eligible to get one of these, but you need to have the coupon prior to making the purchase. So if you're thinking about purchasing a machine or software, let me know. Send me an email with your mailing address, and I'll pop one of these into the mail for you very quickly. And it takes about 6 to 8 weeks for Bernina to process it. And it is a $100 thank you from Bernina. It's a check that you'll receive. It's not a gift certificate for more merchandise or anything. It is a $100 thank you from them for making the purchase, for supporting your Bernina dealer, for watching my videos and subscribing to my channel, and for coming to their events as well. So if you're thinking about that, let me know. So I have got on, let me just show you, I've got on my clear foot so that we're going to be, but I'm going to actually be taking it off in just a minute so that we can really see the feed dogs, which are the workhorse in differential feed. And if you have any questions about it while we're going along, put them in the chat. I do not go back after the live to look at the chat. So if I didn't get to a question of yours, just shoot me an email with the same one and I will answer you. But I don't always go back to look at the chat after the live is done. So let's demystify differential feed. Now, I always think that differential feed is, oh, you know what? Before I start, let me just talk to you about where I'm going to be. Sorry about that. My next event is going to be at Authorized Vac and Sew in Fresno, California. And that is from March 26th to the 28th. I don't know if there are any spots left in that, but if there are, that's Fresno. And I hope to see you there if you're in the neighborhood and you can make it. I will also be at 35th Avenue in Phoenix, Arizona on May 1st and 2nd. And so those are the next two coming up. I've got some stuff after that, but I'll talk about that further down the road. But authorized March 26th through 28th, Fresno, California, 35th Avenue in Phoenix, May 1st and 2nd. I'm just looking at my notes here to make sure I get those dates right. All right, and as you know, April is National Serger Month, so keep your eyes peeled if you're in the market for a new machine. There will always be great deals in April, and a lot of your dealers may have deals on accessories and things that go with your Serger, and that's across the board on any brand as well. But anyway, so let's get back to differential feed. So I think that differential feed is really one of the best features that a serger has and no sewing machine has. And the reason for that is because when you look at the bed of the machine and look under the presser foot, you don't just see one set of feed dogs. You see two, a front and a back set. So let's take a look at those. And I have my clear foot on. I can pivot this. Oops, let me put it up first. I can pivot it out of the way. But I'm going to take the foot off so that you can really see it clearly. So let me take this and get it out of the way and get my thread chain so it's not tangled up. Okay, so you see a front set of feed dogs and a back set. And that's what makes the magic of differential feed. With differential feed, and it's also the reason that a presser foot on your serger is considerably longer than the one on your sewing machine. It's also wider because it has to cover both sets of feed dogs in order for differential feed to work. So let me go back to me for just a second. So with differential feed, the difference is that no matter what your setting is on for your differential feed, your back feed dogs will always stay at a constant speed. The back feed dogs don't change speed. But what you're doing when you adjust that differential feed, whether it's on a normal or neutral setting, it might be designated with an N on some machines, or on the Bernina and many other machines, that neutral setting is 1. And what that means is that when the setting is on 1 or N, the front feed dogs are feeding your fabric in at the exact same rate that the back feed dogs are feeding it out. And that's great for stable woven fabrics if you're on the straight of grain. It's also good sometimes for certain knits. As you know, oftentimes something like even a cotton sweatshirt fabric, if you stretch it crosswise, it has some give to it. It might not have any lycra or anything else in it, but it does give as from side to side. But when you stretch it lengthwise, there is little, if any, stretch at all in that. If you were doing, say, a side seam or a long seam down an arm or a sleeve, you could leave that differential feed setting probably on 1 or N, and it would not stretch the fabric. But when you're going crosswise, say you're doing a cover hem for a hem or just stitching a horizontal seam on that same fabric, you would probably have to adjust the differential feed so that it didn't stretch and distort the original length of that seam for the size that you're making. So, technically, I always like to talk in terms of speed when it comes to the front versus back feed dogs. But technically, it is the size of the rotation that the feed dogs are doing, or the oscillation of them, in comparison to the back feed dogs. But I think it's much easier for me to understand when I talk in terms of speed, and I think it's probably much easier for you. So when your differential feed is on 1 or N, everything is going at the same rate of speed. Front feed dogs, back feed dogs, working at the same rate. Well, say you have a very stretchy, unstable knit. Let's show you one right here. This is a very lightweight one. You can almost see through it. It's so lightweight. It's considerably stretchier crosswise. This would be something, and you can even see a curl a little bit. Lengthwise, it does have a little bit of give, a lot of give crosswise. That is a time when I would need to definitely probably change my differential feed. And one of the most important things when it comes to differential feed, if you're working on a knit fabric, or even say on your off grain, even on a stable woven fabric, and I have a piece of linen here to show you that. Typically, if you're doing garment sewing, even with a woven fabric, you're not always on the straight of grain. Think about the curve of an armhole or a neckline, or even a V neckline on a stable woven fabric. That's definitely not on the straight of grain. It might not be on the true bias, but it doesn't have to be to pull and stretch that edge. So differential feed really needs to be tested, and you need to make samples, and particularly on knit fabrics. When you're doing a sample, you want to test it both in the lengthwise direction, if there's some stretch to that, as well as the crosswise direction. And I always say, and I've got a couple of pieces right here. Here is one that, this is just a French terry. Here it is crosswise, quite a bit of give. There's some lycra in there, so it's got pretty good return. Lengthwise, nothing, no give at all on that. But I still like to test it in both the crosswise direction, and I always cut a piece lengthwise as well, just to be sure that I've got my settings correct. And when you're working on knit fabrics in particular, you often will need 2 different settings for your differential feed, depending on whether you are going across the fabric or lengthwise on the grain line, or kind of the grain line on a knit fabric. So testing really is super important, and making a sample. And believe me, it will always save you a lot of headaches, because I can't begin to tell you how many times I hear people say, oh, I was making a knit t-shirt and I didn't change the differential feed, and now it's all stretched out. How do I fix it? Well, guess what? Once the fabric is stitched and stretched out, chances are you're never going to get it back to the original length again. So making a sample and making a note, you can make a note right on your scrap fabric. And I always like to cut when I'm testing differential feed. Don't cut a little 3-inch or 4-inch piece of fabric. It really won't give you an accurate read. I always cut at least 10 inches crosswise or lengthwise, because that will really tell you whether or not your differential feed setting is where it needs to be for that. Let me just looking. I don't see any questions yet. So, okay, so I've got a bunch of different things to show you differential feed. Now, let's talk about what the numbers mean on your machine. On my machine, let me go to the screen. My differential feed setting is right here. This is my stitch length. This is my differential feed. I can tap this, and on the right-hand side, that is going to show me what my differential feed setting is. And the higher I go with the number, the faster the front feed dogs are going to feed the fabric. And what that's doing is that I think works to kind of explain it and kind of get the picture in my head, and I hope yours as well, is a road race. When you're running in Connecticut, I've mentioned this before, on Thanksgiving Day in Manchester, which is my next town over, they have a Turkey Day race. And we get world-class runners in that Turkey Day race every single year. Well, where do they put those people who are world-class runners? They put them at the head of the pack. Why? Because they're the fastest. If you think about it, if they had your weekend and just everyday people who like to run for exercise, but they're not looking to set records and they're not world-class runners, if they put them in front and the really big runners in the back, think about it. What would happen? Those world-class runners would just catch up to everybody in the front. They'd all kind of squish them up and they'd sort of be running over them. And it's the same thing with differential feed. When those front feed dogs that hit your fabric first are faster than the back ones, they're pushing that fabric along faster than the back feed dogs are feeding it out. So I hope that explains it. Maureen just said, do I ever change the differential feed setting partway down a seam? That's a great question. Yes, there are times when I've done that. And the thing I can think of right away is Great Copy has a really cute baby wrap pattern that I've made a gazillion times as a gift for babies, either in the family or for friends and all sorts of things. And I usually make it out of polar fleece, because if my friends are not if they live in Florida, certainly, but in the Northeast or any cold part of the country, the polar fleece is great for babies. It doesn't scratch them. It's not irritating, and it's warm as can be. Well, what you're doing with that is it's all one piece that you stitch around the front and back pieces together around the perimeter. And there are times when I'm going around a curve, and instead of going down straight on the lengthwise grain on polar fleece, even though it's a knit, I can oftentimes leave my differential feed on one. But then when I get to a curve and I'm going more crosswise, which is considerably stretchier on it, I have a way that I mark the fabric. Right at that point, I stop and I crank up my differential feed a little bit on that part. And then when I get back to going straight up and down the fabric again, I'll stop and bring that differential feed back down to 1 or N, whatever. So that's a great question. Yes, I do change it. But beforehand, I would lay the pattern piece down and either put a pin someplace or some kind of a mark. Not the pin wouldn't go in the seam line, but further in. And that would tell me I have to stop here amp up my differential feed a little bit, and then I'll put another pin to mark where I want to bring it back to that normal setting of 1 again. So that's a great question. Yes, I do change it sometimes. So anyway, so the higher the number is, the faster those front feed dogs are going. And how do you know how to set it? Is what I do, and I've got my ruler here. This is going to go crosswise on this. And what I like to do is I usually cut exactly a 10-inch length of my fabric. And then I test my differential feed. If when I'm stitching crosswise and I have my differential feed on 1 or N, if I stitch it and it goes through and I finish up and my differential feed setting was on 1, but all of a sudden that 10-inch edge has grown to say 10 3/4 of an inch or even 11 inches, I know 1 isn't a high enough setting. So I'll go back, maybe crank up my differential feed, maybe like to 1.5. And what does that mean? It means that the front feed dogs are working 50% faster than the back feed dogs. Okay, so it's moving that fabric through a little bit faster. I'll go through again. I'll cut off that first line of stitching. I'll test it. Well, maybe 1.5, it's better, but maybe that edge, instead of being the original 10 inches, maybe that edge is 10 1/4 inches. I still don't want that at all. Then I might bring my differential feed up to maybe 1.75, maybe even 2. And if it's on 2, it means the front feed dogs are working twice as fast as the back feed dogs, pushing that fabric in. So I run it through, cut off that last stitching line that I did. Well, now maybe that edge that was originally 10 inches, maybe now it's 9 3/4 or 9 7/8. That is the correct setting, because what you're going to do then, and it may have a little bit of, tiny bit of, say, I don't want to say gathering, but a little bit of rippling in it where it's pulled in just a little bit from that higher differential feed setting. What you're going to do is go over to your iron and put a press cloth over your fabric, and that's, I recommend a press cloth on knit fabrics, or almost any fabrics really, so that you don't get any shine or iron marks on it. And with a lift and press motion and a little bit of steam, you're going to press that edge. It'll flatten right out and come right back to that 10-inch original dimension. Let me just, do I ever change it? Maureen saying, is anyone else having problems with the aid? You might have to watch. Oh, I'm not sure what. Is it, are you having trouble hearing? I'm not sure what that is. But anyway, we'll keep going on because it should be fine when you watch the replay. So anyway, so testing your differential feed takes a few minutes, but once you have your settings all mapped out on your fabric, crosswise, lengthwise, or even on the bias on woven fabrics, you'll be good to go and you will get good results with that. So again, the higher the number is, the faster the front feed dogs are going. But when it comes to how your fabric behaves with differential feed, don't forget, I always say this in my Serger Essentials classes, the fingers are mightier than the feed dogs. If you're pulling on your fabric either from the back of the presser foot behind it or in front of it while you're stitching it, even if your differential feed setting is on 2, guess what? You're still going to stretch it, because the amount of tension and pull that you put on that fabric, either from behind or in front of the presser foot, is still going to distort it. So get into the habit of take a breath, relax, and use nice, soft, light pressure with your fingers on the fabric. And just, I like to keep them fairly flat as they feed through, and that helps eliminate the chance of not even consciously pulling on it and distorting that edge. Oh, it was the sound was out of sync. Okay, I don't know why. I have a strong Wi-Fi signal here, so I'm not sure why it's doing that. But anyway, okay. So let's take a look at that now. As I said, this piece is a French terry. This is cut crosswise, and you can use differential feed in a utility mode just to prevent stretching, but there are a lot of fun things that you can do with differential feed, like a lettuce edge. You can gather your fabric with it, and the beauty of using your serger for gathering is you can have absolutely perfectly uniform gathers. Even if your strip of fabric is 20 feet long, it will gather at the exact same rate from the beginning to that last foot of that 20-foot length. You won't have to adjust it. So it's a great thing to have the hang of and to use as one of the tools for whether you're doing decorative stitching or not. And I meant to bring in one of my tote bags, but I had it in the thumbnail picture where I had that little puffing strip down the middle, and I used my differential feed to get both edges perfectly fine. I did not have to sit and pull threads to adjust the gathering to make sure that they were even and exactly straight either. But let's go to the machine and take a look at using it. So front set is the only one that will change if I change my differential feed. The back set of feed dogs always works at the same rate of speed no matter what. So let me put my foot back on. And are there any questions? I don't see any yet. Okay. And you know, I'm just thinking about this with the putting the foot on. A lot of times people go, oh, I don't know why I have so much more trouble putting a foot on my serger than my sewing machine. That's perfectly normal. It's a little bit bulkier, and sometimes it can be a little bit harder to get it on and off, but you'll get it. It's not you. It's just the nature of the beast. So what I want, I'm going to move all these sample pieces out of the way. I've got a whole bunch of different fabrics, and I want to just measure. Let me go to this first. Okay, so I've got my pink fabric. Oh, this is the lengthwise one. Wait a minute. Let me grab the crosswise one. I just had it. Oh, it fell on the floor. Well, that's good. Okay, so wait a minute. Okay, so let's measure this first. Okay, so this is 13 inches. And let's see how it measures once I stitch it with the differential feed just on one. Also, I'm just using a 4-thread overlock. If I were doing a seam, let me go back to me. If I were doing a seam like on a jersey like this, which I made, most of the time, unless something is very snug fitting, I would use a 3-thread narrow overlock stitch on knits. It is a little bit more flexible than a 4-thread overlock. But when it comes to differential feed and gathering, a 4-thread overlock will always give you your best one. So I'm just set up for a 4-thread, but this would be applicable whether I was using a 4-thread or a 3-thread stitch. So let me go back to the machine. Okay, so I'm going to bring my differential feedback to 1. I've got my stitch length at 2.5. And let's just look at that on the screen just so that you can see it. Okay, so I've got my differential feed on 1, stitch length 2.5. I've got all of my tensions on the default setting, the normal setting for that 4-thread overlock. So let's try this out. Now this is going crosswise on this fabric. Just remember that. So I'm bringing that in. I'll probably just skim off a tiny bit of the fabric. You can see my red Trim Bin Plus here, if you're wondering what that is. And you can see I'm not really, oops, I think my thread is caught. Hang on a second. Hang on. Yep, my thread tail is. Let me just give it a snip. There we go. Okay. 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 So let's take a look and see visually if we can just see anything before we actually measure it. I'm just cutting off my thread tails. Get rid of those. Let me go back to me for a second. Okay, so here's my edge, all stitched. And I can see just a little bit of lengthening on that edge. Let's measure it. Not much, maybe about 1/8 of an inch. So not too bad on that as far as going crosswise. But I would probably, I'm going to do the other edge. Let's bring that differential feed up just a little bit. So let's go to the screen. I'm going to bring that differential feed. Let's bring it up. Since I didn't get a lot, let's bring it up to 1.2. So that's going to make those front feed dogs work just a little bit faster than the back feed dogs. Everything else I'm going to leave the same. I'm not going to change tensions or stitch length. And let's see what it looks like with that 1.2. And you can see that in yellow, which tells you that it's not on the default setting anymore. Let's go back to the presser foot and let's see what this does. I actually did leave my knee lift in today. I moved everything out just a little bit more. I always miss my knee lift when I'm working on camera. Okay, and I'm going to hold on to these just so they don't get caught again. And you can see just a little bit of puckering, and that's what I should have used for the word, not gathering or anything else. Just a little bit of puckering on that fabric edge. Okay. And let me just cut off that thread tail on the other end. And let's look at that on this camera first. So you can see just a tiny bit, but let's see if it still measures the original 13 inches. That's going to be the absolute proof. Actually, look at this. It brought it down to 12 and a half. So, but I will bet that if I press this with a little bit of steam, it would bring it right back to that 13 inches, which I think would be fine. So again, even just that small change, a 20% change in the speed of those front feed dogs, did bring that fabric in more. Now, I'm not going to show you lengthwise, but this is the same fabric. There's really no give in it as far as that goes. There's a little bit of lycra in it. It's got decent recovery. I made a little tunic out of this. And it's nice to wear because it does have enough recovery in it. Honestly, the fabric that I'm wearing, I love the color. Do I love the fabric? I'm not nutty about it. I don't think it's got great recovery, but oh well. It's one of those things, sometimes you buy these things and you're not 100% sure how it's going to react. But here it is, crosswise. You can see it doesn't snap back quite as well. There may be a tiny bit of lycra in here. I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell. And then lengthwise, just a tiny bit as well. Not a lot of difference in them. But I would test it both lengthwise for my side seams and going crosswise when I'm doing a cover stitch on the hem, just to be sure that I'm right. So, but let's see what happens. I had some leftover St. Patrick's Day fabric, so I thought this would be kind of festive for my March Serger Savvy. This is just a quilting weight cotton, and I put a 3-thread rolled hem on one edge. But you can use your differential feed for gathering, as I said. Oh, Bobby said you never thought the measure and the test stitching. Oh, yeah. I always measure it. And as I said, typically I just cut these fabrics really quickly. Because I'm not a math genius, I always cut it exactly 10 inches, either lengthwise or crosswise on my fabric. And that way I always know exactly where I'm going differential feed wise. But going back to the pressing your fabric, if you get a little bit of puckering on the edge, when you're pressing a knit fabric, you really want to be careful with that technique as well, because even if you've got perfect differential feed setting on your machine when you're stitching, when you're pressing it, especially if you're not using a press cloth, and using steam, if you really lean into it and you're sliding that iron back and forth really hard on that fabric, even that steam can make the fabric stretch. I'm more inclined to use that lift and press motion with steam and a press cloth over it, the fabric, because that way it keeps everything nice and stable. I like to use steam, definitely, but the lift and press as opposed to the sliding and really putting a lot of pressure on knit fabric is really your better choice for pressing. So keep that in mind. But yes, knowing your original dimensions, Bobby, is super important for your testing. And this is a case where if you were kind of new to fiddling around with your differential feed and using knit fabrics, you might want to get some page protectors and a little loose leaf binder. And again, you can write right on the fabric what worked for the differential feed. And I would just put DF equals 1.2, DF equals 2.0 for something that was really stretchy and unstable. Whatever, you can put it on that, put it in your page protector. And then when you're using a fabric that's similar to the one that you left in your sample book, you'll still test it, because fabrics can, even though they look or feel the same, they can behave differently. But you'll be in pretty much the right neighborhood to get started. It won't take you forever. And as you get used to working on fabrics and changing differential feed, don't be afraid of it. You will get very comfortable with changing the differential feed. And really, you can have so much fun with it too once you understand it. So I'm going to just show you a fun technique for gathering with differential feed. And let me just go back to the machine. I'm going to go to the screen. Okay, as I said, if you're using differential feed for gathering, a 4-thread overlock stitch in overlock mode will give you the best gathering. So what am I going to change for my settings? I am going to change my stitch length as well as my differential feed. I'm going to bring my stitch length all the way up to 4.5. It's a long stitch. And I'm going to bring my differential feed all the way up to 2. And what does that mean? That means that those front feed dogs are pushing that fabric in twice as fast as those back feed dogs, again, that always work at a constant rate of speed. So it's really pushing it in. And this is what I was talking about with the road race, that if you have the fast runners in back and you've got your weekend runners in the front, what's going to happen? They're all those world-class runners are going to bunch up and kind of bump into those hobby runners in the front. Same thing with gathering. You're pushing that fabric in and it's crunching up that fabric and gathering it up and tightening it. Same exact principle. And if you have a machine that allows you to change the tensions on it, you can increase your gathering with changing your needle tension. So we'll show you that partway down on the strip of fabric that I'm using. So let me just get my thread tail out. I always like to clear the thread off of my stitch finger. You've heard me talk about that. And that way I don't have a big glob of thread at the beginning of my fabric. And it keeps it nice and neat and tidy. So I have my stitch length at 4.5. My differential feed is on 2. My front feed dogs are working twice as fast as my back feed dogs. And let's see what that does. I'm only going to go part way down the fabric because then I'm going to change the tension. And you can see how much fun that is too. I'm going to skim off just a little, hold my thread change, and I've just got my hands underneath. You can't see it off camera. I'm not far enough out. But I'm just holding the edge of the fabric. And operator technique, if you're gathering, is super, super important. Again, if you're putting any tension at all from in front of the foot or behind it, guess what? Even with your differential feed set on 2, it's not going to gather. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to bring my seam guide over, although this is just a sample. It doesn't really matter how much I take off. So you can see it starting to gather back here. A nice soft gather, very nice with that. I'm going to go a little bit farther. Okay, and now I'm going to crank up my left and right needle tensions. And that's going to snug up and tighten up those gathers even more. So let me just show you what I'm doing with that. I'm back here. I'm going to change my left needle and my right needle. You see the LN and the RN. I'm leaving my upper and lower loopers right on the normal default setting of 4. Let's bring our left needle tension. Let's bring it up to 7.5 and the right needle to 7.4. Okay. And now you can see both of those are in yellow, but we're leaving the loopers alone. We're keeping the stitch length and differential feed settings just the same as before, but you're going to see tighter gathers here. Definitely tighter, and I'll show you this under the other camera, but you can already, whoops, I guess you're not going to see anything if I don't put it on the right setting. You can already see tighter gathers starting here. And now I'm going to bring my tension on my needles up all the way. I'm going to really crank it up to 9. Now, I will say, depending on your thread, and I have not tried it with this green thread. This really kind of goes against what I always say. Don't try stuff on camera if you haven't tested it off camera. But what the heck, let's go for it. So let's bring our tensions up. Let's bring it as high as we can, up to 9 on the left needle and the right needle. Now, what I was talking about before is that some threads will stand up very well to that super high tension. Others may break. So that's when I would definitely suggest testing it before you go onto your fabric. But if it's a fabric or a seam that's going to be caught in another seam, you might want to go to a lighter color thread. I find that threads, the really dark threads, have more of a tendency to break, and it probably has something to do with the dyes in it. I'm not 100% because I'm not a super thread maven on that. So let's go and see what that 9 does for differential feed. Okay. And I'm going to stitch a little bit shorter just to help minimize the chance of breaking. And I'm leaving a little bit longer thread tail because I want to talk to you about that as well. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so here we are in the beginning, very soft gathers with the differential feed setting just on 2, and your tensions are on the default setting. Then here, I brought my tensions on my needles up to 7, tighter gathers, and oh wow, look at this, how tight that gathering is with the left and right needle tensions on 9. So tension as well as differential feed can really be an asset as far as gathering for decorative techniques. Now, if you're doing something where this seam had to fit, say, between notches or along a seam of a second fabric, I like to leave a long thread tail, like at least 6 inches. This isn't quite 6 inches, but I like to leave that at the beginning and end so that if I overdid the gathering a little bit and needed to loosen it a little bit so that it fit the other piece of fabric that it's being stitched to, I have enough thread on this chain that I can loosen up those gathers, and the gathering is not going to completely fall off. You know yourself, when you do traditional gathering on your sewing machine, if you cut that thread right at the edge of the fabric and you have to loosen the gathers a little bit, it falls off and the fabric just becomes flat again on that edge. Give yourself enough of a thread chain so that if you need to loosen them, it'll be okay. So going back to differential feed itself, you know that most of the time we use it by increasing the speed of those front feed dogs and cranking the number up above 1 or n. But you notice also on your machines, you have settings that go below 1 or n to maybe either 0.5 or 0.7, depending on your brand and model machine. What is that all about? Well, if increasing the number speeds up the front feed dogs, when you lower that number below 1 or n, it's going to slow them down. Hey, Debbie. Thanks for joining. I just saw you say hi. It's going to slow them down. And when would you want to use that? Well, you can use that to create a beautiful lettuce edge, you know, that ruffly, ripply, fluttery edge on garments or other types of projects as well. But also, it's very handy when you're working on lightweight sheer fabrics, and you can see me right through this fabric, or even if you're doing a single layer of a quilting cotton. How many times have you made just fun napkins out of a quilting weight cotton? And you've got your 3-thread rolled hem, you've got everything on the default settings, um, you've got your tensions on normal, your differential feed is on 1 or N, stitch length for a rolled hem might be short, maybe it's 1.2 or 5, whatever for the weight of the thread you're using. And the edge kind of puckers in and pulls in a little bit. That's because it's a single layer. To get that to lay flat and stay at the original dimension without it pulling in on the edges, which, I mean, it's not terrible, but it looks better if it stays nice and flat. Lower your differential feed. That will slow down your front feed, dogs. Also, on fabrics that are very slippery or maybe a little bit more finicky to manage, by slowing down the front feed, dogs, with that lower setting on your differential feed, it makes it easier to handle that. So let's do a rolled hem on this. I'm going to just switch out my machine to a 3-thread rolled hem. You might as well get a chance to look at that while I'm doing it. Okay, so I am going to go to stitch number 8. I'm just going to do it the fast way. I'm so used to this machine that I know what my settings are. And I think I've told you, or you've heard me say, even though the lower looper tension on the rolled hem, the default setting's 5.5, I really like it higher. I like it on 7. So I'm going to bring that up. And I do this all the time. I'm going to leave my right needle and upper looper on the default setting. I can leave my stitch length on 1.2 because I'm just going to leave the serger comb thread in just for speed. If I were doing this on an actual project, I'd probably put in a different thread, but that's okay. And I'm going to take out my left needle and I'm going to cut that thread also. Take it right off. You've heard me talk about taking off a cone just so that you don't have any thread tails waving in the wind and getting hung up on adjacent threads. I'm going to pull that to get that thread all the way through. And now I'm going to take out that left needle. And every once in a while, I'll have somebody send a photo and a question. They'll say, oh, my rolled hem doesn't look great. In fact, somebody in the industry did this. I think it was like, maybe 6 months ago. She sent me a picture of her rolled hem and said, the stitching looks kind of weird on this. What is wrong? And the minute I looked at it, I thought, you know what? I bet she left her left needle in. So I said, did you leave your left needle in? Sure enough, she did. I said, take it out. Even though there's no thread on it, it can sometimes affect the way the stitch looks on the fabric. So just take it out, pop it in your machine. All right, so I am set up. Let's go over these settings again. 1.2. Now, I'm going to leave it on 1 for one edge, and then I'm going to flip it around and lower that differential feed setting just so that you can see the difference. So let's go to the machine. I always like to double check my stitch when I change it. I always chain off just to make sure nothing went astray. And I don't know, I think my thread is caught when, hang on a second. We always love it when this stuff happens on camera, you know what I mean? There we are, okay. Okay. All right, I think all the threads are clear. All right, so I'm leaving my differential feed on 1 for this right now, and let's see what this looks like. And actually, if I were doing this on a real project, I would put a piece of wash away Solvay stabilizer on top of this for a really perfect look, but I didn't think to do that ahead of time, so I'm not going to do it and take up the time with that. I'm going to hold my thread chains. Oops, and I'm going to pull back my stitch finger. Let me get this going. Ah, that looks more like a rolled hem. Okay, this is showing exactly what I wanted it to. I'm going to have to do this on the close-up camera because it's kind of subtle. I'm going to move this other stuff out of the way. And I hope it'll show up. There is a little bit of puckering along the edge. You can see it like right through here and over here as well. So how do we eliminate that? And you can see it's pulled in, even without me pulling on the fabric. It's pulled in on that edge a little bit. And it's because it's so light and sheer. So to counteract that, I'm going to lower the differential feed setting. So let's go to the screen again. I'm going to tap that. And I'm going to bring this all the way down to 0.7. And again, that is slowing down my front feed dogs. So let's put this under. I'm going to pull that thread chain so I can hang on to it. I'm very big with a rolled hem stitch. Let me just give you another tip here. With a rolled hem stitch, and especially if you've got decorative thread in your upper looper, oftentimes a rolled hem thread tail behind the foot loves to kind of curl and pigtail around and get hung up in your beginning stitches. Hold that thread tail for the first few stitches till you get past that and then eliminate it. I can't tell you how many times I've done that when I've been in a rush, and then I end up having to restitch it because I can't take it out of the stitching without ruining the fabric. So I just have to cut that edge off and redo it again. So here we are. We've got our differential feed down to 0.7 right here. And let's stitch this again. And so what that's going to do, it's instead of pushing the fabric faster toward the back feed dogs, it's going to slow it down. It's kind of the equivalent, let me go back to me for a second before I do that. It's kind of the equivalent of taut sewing. And you don't see that term used too much, but you know yourself, if you're using sheer fabrics or sometimes even like slippery thin fabrics, a lot of times you need to hold it from behind the presser foot on your sewing machine and in front of the presser foot so that you don't get a puckery seam. That lower setting on your feed dogs, on your differential feed, is going to do the taut sewing for you. So, okay, I think I've said everything I need to say on that. Okay, so, all right, and I'll just trim off a little bit. Get that right in here. Hold my thread tails to get going. And let's see what it looks like. Okay, and let's go to that close-up camera again. Let me get this out of the way. Let me cut off my thread tails a little bit. Get these out of the way. Okay, and you'll see that this edge is flatter. You can see there's no puckering on that at all from that edge. Pretty nice rolled hem too. So by slowing down those feed dogs on a single layer of lightweight fabric, like a quilting weight cotton or anything equivalent in that weight, or a sheer fabric, by slowing that down, not only does it keep that edge flat and smooth, but it actually makes it a little bit easier to manage under the presser foot because it's holding it back just a little bit. And it's holding it back just enough for that edge not to pucker, but you're not doing the work and kind of guessing on how much tension to put on it. So it's really a fantastic feature on a serger. I thought if we had time, oh, it's just 1 o'clock. Okay, well, since I'm already in a rolled hem, I'm going to show you, rather than gathering, let me show you really quickly how to do a lettuce edge. Now, a lettuce edge is great on knit fabrics, and I've mentioned this in my decorative stitch classes and Serger Essentials also. Lettuce edges have been big and ready to wear, not only on children's at the edges of their ankle socks, but you see it on women's dressy dresses. If your knit fabric has enough stretch lengthwise, believe it or not, you can do it lengthwise on seams as well if you're going to have them exposed to the outside. It's a fun technique to do. It's very stylish for all levels of garment sewing. Super, super fun to do, and it's easy. That's the best part. So I've got Soft Lock, which is a woolly polyester thread. Since I'm in a rolled hem, I'm going to cut, and I should probably change out all my colors, but I'm not going to do it. I've got dark green in my needle as well as lower looper. And I'm just going to put this in my upper looper. Let me get my green thread out of here. So we're just going to run a little bit longer, but I think it's kind of a fun technique to know how to do. I can remember years ago, I was doing an event, and a woman said she wanted to learn how to do that ruffly edge, and it happened to be a technique that I was including in that workshop. And when she ever saw how easy it was to do it, she's like, that's all there is to that? Really? She just couldn't believe it. I think she thought it was going to be some very complicated technique to do. It's not. So I'm going to put the woolly polyester in my upper looper. And, something that people ask with either woolly nylon or woolly polyester is, why doesn't my air threader work with that? Well, if you look up close at either woolly poly or woolly nylon, there's a lot of little air holes through it. It's fluffy. And so sometimes the air threading, which would feed through a solid thread like your Serger cone thread or 12-weight thread, it'll grab it and blow it right through. But with woolly polyester and nylon, because it's got so much air built into the fluffiness of the texture of the thread, sometimes the air threading just kind of blows through it. But it just depends. Hello, Susan. You're just joining us. You can catch the beginning of this in the replay. It'll be on my YouTube channel recorded. Okay, so let me go back and let's see if this blows through with the air threading. But if not, just use a thread cradle. No big deal. Yeah, it did. It caught it. Okay, so it's all threaded up in my upper looper. Okay, so I am going to leave all of my settings the same. I've got that 1.2 stitch length, 0.7 for the differential feed. It's lower. And Kathy, you said, oh, hi. Hello. And from Fort Wayne, thanks for joining us. We're almost at the end, but you will catch the beginning and most of this, or all of it, on the replay. So no worries there, okay? Palm Beach Gardens, very nice. My sister and her husband are in Sarasota for the month of March. They're very smart to get out of the winter weather. Okay, so let me just get this going. I'm holding my thread tails again, and let me just get over to the foot. And on this, with the lettuce edge, a lot of times people like to stretch the edge as they're stitching. I don't like to do it because while I'm stitching, simply because I find that it creates more of a chance for the stitches to kind of bounce off the edge of the fabric. Then you have to start all over again. I wait till the edge is fully stitched. So I'm going to just move this along. I didn't do a good job steering the fabric. I was busy making sure, I was hoping the camera didn't bounce or vibrate, so I was kind of holding on to that. Okay, so let's take a look at this first. Okay, now I have not done any pulling, but you can see with that differential feed lowered, already I've got some waviness on the edge, but I would call that wavy, but definitely not a lettuce edge. So what do I like to do? I like to do what I call my pinch and pull method, and I'm going to go over to the close-up camera and show you that. So here we are, and you can see that green thread, which I never would have used, but there is a little bit of green in here. So what I like to do, that short stitch gives me excellent coverage, and that's another reason that I love the woolly threads very much. I just cut off my thread tail. So what I do to get that lettuce edge is about every 2 inches, I do what I call pinch and pull. And I'll tell you, there are 2 good reasons that I like to do it like this. So about every 2 inches, I'm just pulling on that edge. And depending on the knit, some will give you a more ruffly look than others will. Okay, so now that is what I would call a lettuce edge, a ruffly lettuce edge with that lower differential feed. But let me go back to me for a second. The reason there, as I mentioned before, there are a couple of reasons why I don't like to pull the fabric as I'm stitching. Because as you know, when you're using a knit fabric, and I get questions about this all the time too, when you pull knit fabric, it skinnies it down. It's just like when you pull on an elastic that might be thick when it's relaxed. You pull on it and stretch it, and it skinnies down. And what happens? It moves away from your stitch, from your knife, as well as possibly your right needle too. So that's one reason. But also the other reason I like my pinch and pull method is because it eliminates the chance of pulling the whole surface of the fabric. I only want to get ruffling and stretching right on the edge of that knit fabric. I don't want to distort the rest of the fabric. So by pinching and pulling after the edge is all stitched, I'm going to get really nice ruffling on that. And if you don't get enough ruffling the first go around, just go back and with shorter intervals of, or shorter lengths of that edge, just give it a nice energetic pull, and that will ruffle it even more. I'm just watching myself as I go along here just to be sure I'm doing this okay. So yeah, you can see it ruffles it even more. Let me just show it to you up here, just like that. So are there any questions about differential feed, or the higher the number, the faster the front feed dogs go, which eliminates that. But also one other thing, and I'm going way over time, but one other thing I wanted to mention, and I had done this before I went on camera, is if you're doing something on a neckline, you can see the curve. You're not on the straight of grain really at all, or even on a shoulder seam that is slanted. That's when stay tapes come in and help eliminate stretching and pulling even on a woven fabric. Also, armholes. Can you see how much stretching that does? Because I'm not on the straight of grain except for maybe a little bit right here. The rest of this is not on a, well, I bet it is. Part of this is on a true bias that really stretches. So you can use your differential feed effectively to gather your fabric, to get a lettuce edge by stretching it, but also on woven fabrics, when you're off the straight of grain, you can help eliminate any stretching on that, like around a neckline, armholes, a curved hem, any of that. Differential feed is going to be your best friend, and that's why they call it a knit fabric's best friend, because it really does the trick, especially on the very unstable knits. And there are so many beautiful knit fabrics around that differential feed will help you manage it when you understand it. And if it's a knit fabric that you've never used before, but you just fall in love with it at the fabric store, and it has a lot of stretch in it, what I would say is spend the money and buy an extra quarter yard and play with your differential feed with that extra fabric. Or if you know you're going to have enough left over after you cut your pattern out anyway, use those scraps to play and practice your differential feed settings. Oh, Mary Beth is asking about the Trim Bin Plus. Okay. And I should have brought her, I think the website, I don't think I have her card down here. Let me just look. Hang on a second. I had it down here last month. The Trim Bin Plus is Barbara Goldcorn. I think if you go to Cutting Edge Serger Designs.com, that is Barbara Goldcorn's business email, and you can order it from her. I don't carry it, but it's great because it has this little container where you can keep your clips, your pins. You may even throw in, if you're changing the presser foot for any reason, you can keep it in there. And when you go to dump your scraps out of here, just like that, you're not going to be dumping out the things that you want to save. And as I said, I think I threw away one of my piping feet by accident doing that with my regular trim bin on. So Cutting Edge Serger Designs plural.com, and I think you can order from them. Oh, good. I'm glad. Oh, Bobby said, yes, that is the website. Okay, good. I'm glad I remembered it. All right. Well, thank you all so much. And thanks for hanging in there for an extra 13 or 14 minutes. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. If you need an ambassador coupon, let me know, but you have to do it before you make the purchase. And that is sent into Bernina of America, not through your dealer. So just let me know on that. But keep your eye peeled. April is National Serger Month, and I have a fun thing coming up for that. So we'll talk about that soon. But I hope you all have, somebody said she bought one. It's nice. Yes, it is. It's very nice. And they come in different colors. The trim bin comes in red, white, and I think they've got some different colors for different brands too. So anyway, enough about that. Thanks for joining me. Enjoy the spring weather if it's warming up near you. By me, it is already 67 degrees, so I'm going to go for a walk. Thanks. Take care, everybody. Happy sewing and searching.